It's a bit of a hot mess.
What's going on, everyone, and welcome to Never Lag. I'm one of your hosts, Levi, joined by the man who fell in the pit, Zach. And today we're doing an episode of Seen It, where we talk about something we watched rather than something we played. And more specifically, this is on Obi-Wan Kenobi, episode 3. So, how you doing today, Zach?
I'm doing pretty good. I briefly was confused by episode 3 because I was thinking of Star Wars episode 3. We're not talking about Star Wars episode 3. We're talking about Star Wars Kenobi part 3.
It has been very confusing.
It's mildly confusing. I'm good. I'm really interested to talk about this episode with you because my feelings are a little bit all over the place. But how are you doing?
I'm doing good. Yeah. It is kind of funny mentioning like Kenobi episode 1, 2, and 3, and you think of the prequels, and the thing is the problem won't go away because there's not more than 9 episodes. So
yeah,
there's only 6, so it'll still be confusing. I'm curious as well. I mean, I know that we left off maybe a touch overly critical on the first 2, but that's debatable. But we'll see if the vibes get better today or not. So to start things off, what are your surface, a sentence or two? How do you feel about episode 3?
it's a bit of a hot mess. Is my high level opinion. I think my feelings continue. What I said for episodes 1 and 2 of Kenobi were that there are components I liked about it, but there were components that felt a bit goofy or like caricatures. Some of the writing felt pretty weak through and through. And I feel like that continues here. I think it's annoying because I feel like there are things I liked more in this episode than in the previous 2, but there are also things that still continue to fall equally as flat. So I think I'm still mixed overall. I'm excited to talk about some of those different components. I will say we got to see some Darth Vader, and that was good. That was good to see Darth Vader. What about you? What are your high level thoughts?
It was awesome to see Darth Vader. That's what we've been waiting for. I honestly couldn't tell you if I enjoyed this episode more than the other 2. I mean, like it's just kind of all the same to me. And I kind of knew after 1 and 2 what we're in for with all 6 of these.
Yeah,
that's a third of the entire series, so it's hard to imagine it's going to change drastically after that. But after 3, it's like, okay, this is what we're getting. Maybe time to adjust expectations accordingly. And overall thoughts are, I mean, I still enjoyed it. I'm still enjoying watching this. I'm not going to complain about more Star Wars too much, but like
I am.
It just oh wait, I am going to complain. Never mind. It's just when we were told we were getting these 6 episodes, I thought, man, this is so freaking cool that we're getting this story in between episodes 3 and 4, the movies. And clearly they have something cool to tell. Like clearly there's a reason they're doing this. And it's starting to feel like the reason they're doing this is just like money to make a Kenobi series. Like it feels like there wasn't a solid story yet.
That doesn't sound like Disney.
Right? I don't know. It's just, that's kind of how I'm feeling after 3 episodes. I'm like, man, what are we doing? Like, this is just, It's really slow going. So those are my surface level thoughts. I did enjoy certain aspects of this episode more, but I can't lie and say that, man, this just took a massive turn for the better here in episode 3. It's just kind of more of the same. So with that, let's kind of get into it. Let's get into the nitty gritty, as we say here. Never lag. For some reason, we should stop saying that, though.
Yeah, it's weird, but that's our thing.
It's our thing. We don't make the rules. So, episode 3 kicks off with Darth Vader's armor being assembled, which was cool.
Always good.
Cool. I don't know that we've ever really seen it quite the way we saw it here. So, it was pretty cool to see that in 2022 being reimagined, so to speak, and seeing, you know, his body and his robot leg being attached, and um, kind of kind of seeing, like, we all know there's a man underneath that armor, but in the original trilogy, I mean, for 99% of that, he's just a kind of a robot looking dude. And so to really see like Anakin underneath that, what he looks like now, and see him transform into the mascot or whatever that is Darth Vader was, I thought that was pretty cool to see.
Yeah, absolutely agree with that. Um, I think those are the things that we were hoping for, is like seeing more Vader being Vader, seeing the armor assembled is cool. It kind of connects like where we last saw Anakin, which was a heap of burning flesh. Seeing that is now this person who's like partially robotic and is, you know, has quite the morning routine that he has to go through to get dressed
Yeah,
for the
no
day.
kidding.
That was cool. I think the visual aesthetics of Vader were mostly pretty good. So yeah, I don't have anything else to add there. I think my thoughts are going to revolve more around, again, some of the writing, and uh, I feel like there are a couple instances where Vader feels a bit caricaturey, but we'll get into that.
I guess just sometimes you forget how much of his person he's missing under that armor, and so to
Mm-hmm.
really see that illustrated was a good reminder. But after that, we get to see our first interaction between Vader and Reva, and it's nothing too special to call out here. There's still really no sign of why she knows that he's Anakin. Their
Yeah.
relationship, that's kind of the note I made here, is their relationship doesn't seem close in the slightest. It almost seems like this could be the first time they've ever spoken to each other.
Mm-hmm.
So I still got to call out from the other episode. Why does she know that he's Anakin? Yeah, that's pretty much it. Vader's just like, hey, good job, kid. I don't really care about that Inquisitor, because she blames his death on Kenobi, obviously, and he's like, I don't really care. It's all about Kenobi at this point. I know what you want. Don't let me down, or I'm gonna kill you. Basically, is what Vader says. Super Vader like things. Um, do you have anything on this interaction? Any thoughts?
No, I wonder about her knowing who Anakin is as well. That feels important. I hope they reveal it, and I hope there's some meaningful reasons as to why she knows that, and it's not just a plot contrivance. I feel like they just skimmed over this Grand Inquisitor's death quite a bit. um, like, I'm fine with her, backstabbing and trying to climb the ladder, but I don't know. Vader has to know how Sith tend to work. It just it just feels like we're kind of sweeping things under the rug and moving on. And um, some of the issues I had with the first two episodes were that it was hard to take the Inquisition seriously, because the Grand Inquisitor is kind of a doofus, and the other guy with the hat was kind of kind of felt just like he was there and kind of pointless. And Riva was more
He's called
capable.
the Samurai Inquisitor.
Right, that's right. The Samurai Inquisitor. Riva was more capable and took more proactive action, which was nice. But it felt discordant with how the power structures of the Empire would be. So it just felt out of place. Like, she was wildly insubordinate in public multiple times. They didn't take her seriously. She just kills him, and now Vader's like, yeah, just do your job good, and maybe you'll get promoted. Which, I don't mind some of those beats, but the way they've executed them makes it just feel off. And so I kind of felt that. I was like, Vader's not at all curious what happened to the Inquisitor. Obi-Wan's been in hiding all these years. Like, it just feels like the plot is moving along for the plot's sake.
I didn't really get any of that. I mean, to me, the Empire, they're the villains, right? They're this villainous Empire. They're kind of a dog eat dog Empire. I mean, they're not a smooth running machine. Everyone's out for themselves. Watch your back. I didn't have a problem with Vader not really caring about what happened, because the person he's been looking for a decade is alive. They now have a track on him. He couldn't care less about this Grand Inquisitor dying, who was kind of a doofus, which isn't another weird thing. But let's see. And then the other note I made is that Riva's motivation at this point simply seems to be to be at Vader's side, like his second in command. Like, that seems to be her only motivation from what we could gather from this episode. There does seem to be some other things going on, hopefully, which we'll get to in a little bit. But then we cut back to Kenobi and Leia. They're arriving on the planet that the coordinates took them to. It's I couldn't quite tell, Mafuzo or Mapuzo.
I
I
think it
don't.
was Mapuzo
Did you know
with a P.
Mapuzo? Okay, so they arrive there. Kenobi's hallucinating, has visions of young Anakin. Then we cut back to Riva saying that she traced Kenobi. She traced the ship coordinates and where it was headed, which I was like, thank goodness, because that would have felt like such a dumb thing if, because that was my thought. I'm like, they could just trace where they went, you know, it wouldn't be that hard to find him. So thankfully, that is what happened, which would make sense. She traced them. She knows exactly where Kenobi is. Um, we do get a little bit of an interaction between Riva and Samurai Inquisitor. It was kind of awkward as usual, but the interesting line I thought there was they're having this fight over who gets the credit over whatever, you know, because they all want to be teacher's pet with Darth Vader. But at the end, Samurai Inquisitor says, "I will get what I deserve, and so will you." And Riva says, after he walks away to herself, she says, "I certainly hope so." And that line feels like it's really pointing to something, her motivations, where she's coming from, what she's trying to do, something that happened in the past that is motivating her. So hopefully we'll get some sort of, I assume we'll get some more information on that line. Did you have any thoughts on what she said or that interaction in general?
It did feel like foreshadowing, like she said it sort of ominously. And just, I think it was showing their different perspectives. Like he was saying that, you know, you're going to get what you deserve. He's implying he deserves the promotion and she deserves death or something else. And, you know, she kind of agreed, but in a way that shows she has a different perspective on what that's going to be. So I agree that the interactions between her and Samurai Hat are kind of awkward. I don't hate the motivations of wanting to climb the ladder and attain power per se, but I will say it feels a little bit on the nose. And I think that's kind of what I was getting to earlier with Vader and everything else. It feels like the dog eat dog stuff is just so on the nose. And I get that they're an evil empire, but a little bit of subtlety, a little bit more subtlety might be nice.
Yeah, it kind of made me wonder, like, the way she said, "I certainly hope so," to like, "You'll get what you deserve." To me, I took that to mean she feels that she is owed something for some reason. Like she feels like it's her destiny, or you know, whatever it may be,
Mm-hmm.
to sit by Vader's side or whatever it is. So it'll be interesting to see if that line actually has meaning, or if it was just like "I know you are, but what am I?" I don't know. We'll see.
Right.
My next note from Kenobi, and this actually is 2 points in this episode, but I wrote it here because they're walking through the desert. Leia, they get to the coordinates, no one's there. Leia is also saying, like, "Why can't you trust people?" And Kenobi's like, "Not all people are good." And so my note is just Kenobi's jaded whining is kind of annoying. Like it's kind of a lot. You know, I understand that we're trying to paint this picture of Kenobi's kind of in a broken state, but man, 3 episodes of him just being kind of whiny and pathetic has been
Yeah.
kind of a lot, I feel.
And
So,
again, I wish it was more subtle. Like you can show that someone's broken and disillusioned without being so over the top. Like nobody's good, Leia. Everyone's going to hurt you.
or
Like
even like
the dude's in
or
his
even like
like
some anger or some frustration. Like it's just it's coming out all pathetic
right
is
anger,
is my
frustration,
biggest
more.
problem.
I think by subtlety, I could also go with like just more complexity in the emotion. Like this still
Complexity
is
in the emotion, yeah.
this still is Obi-Wan. Dude's in his 50s or 60s and is a character at this point. He was a general in an army. Like he's been through a lot. He even if he's broken and disillusioned and a bit of a shell, he's still going to have remnants of that. And I think at
Yeah.
times it struggles to show that nuance, and it just feels like we have to show he's broken, so they make him overly pathetic, and then I'm sure at some point, like they kind of have hints of this in the later episode. I'm sure at some point they'll flip the switch and he'll be like, "I'm Obi-Wan," and it'll be like, "Yay!"
Yeah.
I wish it was handled with more nuance and complexity.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it still feels like we're dealing with episode 1 Kenobi at this point in episode 3 here, you know? Like
Yeah,
it's been a lot of it. So, at this point they meet a transporter. They're literally in the middle of the desert. No one was at the coordinates that they got to. I think his name was Frack. I couldn't hear
I
that
think
either, but
so.
I
Or
think it was Frack.
Frick, was it Frick? Maybe
Frick
it
or
was
Frack.
Frack. One of those
Um,
two.
I think his name was Frickin' Frack is
Yeah,
what his name was.
that
And
that
um
freaking Frack man.
yeah. But this is probably my favorite line in the whole show. Because it was just so weird but hilarious. Leia, who is supposed to be silent, according to her conversation with Kenobi, immediately
That was
walks
good.
up to a stranger and starts talking to him. And she says something to the effect of, "We were going on a trip and we got lost in this field." To which Frack responds, "That's a weird story." I was just like, it was so blatant, but like perfectly hilarious. Like this dude is just very relatably like, "Huh, that doesn't make sense." And then they go on to finish their story. But I thought that was pretty hilarious.
That was funny. Overall, I feel like I enjoyed young Leia more in this episode than in previous episodes. I had like I didn't dislike her necessarily, but I feel like some of her quippy dialogue landed better for me. Um, uh, just the writing I think worked a little bit better in the dialogue like that. And her
Yeah,
character of being like, so he's like, you be silent, and then she just starts talking. That was good, and that did feel like what a willful child would do. Um,
yeah,
and I liked Frick or Frack, whatever his name was. I thought he was a cool alien design. I think he was voiced by like it might have been Zach Braff or someone. He was someone familiar. Uh, I'll look it up in a minute here, but
yeah. Sorry, I wouldn't know.
he his voice, I thought he had kind of this like friendly voice that you kind of came around to, but there's still that
Yeah,
hint of tension of like, well, that's a strange story. Maybe we should check in
that's
with
weird.
the
Hopping.
Imperials. Yeah, so that
Yeah,
whole
and
sequence was kind of
he
fun.
was that perfect like puppet looking classic Star Wars creature that's hasn't caught up with the with 2022 not graphics but special effects.
Yeah, it was more practical
So classic
effects.
Star Wars there.
Yeah.
Exactly. So they hop in, they're taking a ride to the port. At some point they pick up some stormtroopers. They're riding in the back of this like truck thing. They pick up some stormtroopers who seem very uninformed about what Kenobi looks like, and also not too suspicious about this random guy and small girl in the middle of nowhere when they are looking for a Jedi plus Leia,
Yeah.
which I felt was just a little bit ridiculous because, like,
Yeah.
not only are they looking for a Jedi, but I feel like they would also say, hey, he's with a young girl. He's with Leia, the princess, right?
Right. Also, can we take a second to realize that Obi-Wan has done nothing to not look like a Jedi? He still
Yeah, I know.
dresses in
Yeah.
like Jedi robes. Like, I don't know. It
And
feels like he'd try a
my
little
other thing
harder.
I wrote down, my other thing I wrote down is that Kenobi chooses the most random times to put his hood up. Like when he's concerned and when he's not makes no sense. He'll be like just normal talking to people, and then he'll put his hood up, and then he'll take his hood down in another scenario where he's like walking through the town later, puts his hood down, and it's like, what what are you doing? Why shouldn't you wear that thing at all times at this point? Because the entire galaxy is looking for you, and a lot of people should know what you look like. So, anyways, um, they get in this whole discussion. Um, at one point, he literally forgets to call her Luma because they have this whole backstory
Oh,
about how
yeah.
they're farmers from somewhere, and he calls her Leia. He calls her Leia, and the stormtroopers are so uninformed that they're able to wiggle their way out of that. And he says that Leia was her mother's name, and he gets confused, and they miss her, and blah blah blah. So the stormtroopers are like, "Hey, if you find a Jedi, let us know." And they get off the truck. So that was
So
that was kind of a ridiculous
that
scenario, but
that felt like too much of a plot convenience that the stormtroopers are like, "Did he say Leia? Well, we have a job to do," and they just leave. It's like they should. You'd think they'd
right
be
at that
informed
point, you
enough
think,
that
"Oh, it's over."
right, and they kind of start to play it that way, and then it brushes
Yeah,
past. But the other thing I have to say is like it felt a little ridiculous that Obi-Wan would accidentally call her Leia in front of stormtroopers. I know he's a broken shell of a man, but he's not completely incompetent. And like, if you're with an escaped princess and the world's most powerful force user who's hunted down your entire order is actively hunting you, and his goons are sitting across the aisle of the taxi you're on, you're going to be thinking pretty hard about what you say. And Obi-Wan was just kind of like, it's like he was daydreaming and he accidentally said Leia. That just, and the reason they did it is because then she was able to kind of like save his fumble. And it kind of led into some interesting conversation moments between Obi-Wan
right.
and Leia, which I kind of liked where their conversation went, but it felt like a really just a really clumsy way to facilitate that character building dialogue down the line by having him do something that just felt really out of character for someone of his capabilities.
Yeah, well, I thought it was believable, but that's simply because they've painted a pretty pathetic picture of Kenobi at this point. Like I didn't blink twice when he did that, and I thought it was kind of um, amusingly ironic that he's the one who slips up instead of her when he's telling her to be quiet and he's going to handle all the talking. I found all that amusing, and I believed it, but part of that's because they've kind of painted this pathetic picture of him, and I even thought him instead of freaking out, like taking a second and then just saying, I thought him rebounding from his slip up was kind of well done, but at the end of the day I just find it hard to believe that like they're they're just not that suspicious of these two random people that fit the exact descriptions of who they're looking for in the middle of nowhere. So
I'd agree with that. And
let's see
I mean,
from
around Obi-Wan's competence, I'd just say that like I find it believable that he is kind of in this broken state, but there are certain things that just like I can understand him being afraid to confront things, unwilling to take action, but there's still a certain bar of competence I expect from like one of the eminent generals of the Clone Wars. But
it
oh
probably
well,
probably would have helped if he didn't name her Luma. Like pick a name that's not so close to
didn't
Leia.
didn't Leia pick those names, or was it him? I can't remember.
Maybe, yeah, I think she did. So I that probably didn't help the
That didn't
situation.
help the
But
situation, but
yeah.
yeah.
So, oh, and then after the stormtroopers get off, there's a little bit of discussion between her and Kenobi. And the only thing I thought was interesting is he mentions having a brother, which
Oh yeah.
I don't know if we know that or knew that or if that's no idea. But I thought that was kind of interesting. He mentions being taken from his family and vaguely remembering having a little brother.
Yeah. I liked hearing just a little bit of backstory on him, like trying to relate about what it's like becoming a Jedi and hearing just a little bit about what he remembers before he was taken. And it's always interesting to hear about the whole Jedi Order is kind of messed up and that they take
Yeah,
kids and
totally. It was like a very real moment, and you're like, "Dang, that's kind of
the Jedi
crazy."
were,
You don't
yeah,
even
they're,
you don't even remember your family because you were taken from them so young.
yeah.
And
And
it's
it
like,
kind
yeah,
of,
that's what Jedi do.
yeah. And it kind of makes you realize that maybe there's some instances where that worked for the better for the kids, but you can imagine a lot of instances where it's like that's just really sad to think about. So I thought that was a good
Yeah,
moment. It added some
yeah, for
depth
sure.
to Obi-Wan's character.
I would agree. So they finally get to the gate of, I assume, the port, um, and there's stormtroopers and it's a checkpoint and all that. And turns out Frack is not as stupid as maybe we thought he might be. He's quite aware that something weird is going on, and he basically whispers to one of the stormtroopers, "There's something weird going on here. Thought you might want to check him out." And so he basically sells him out. At which point they bring a droid, which I thought this was interesting because I'm like, wouldn't they have some sort of? I mean, this is a technological fantasy setting here. Like they would have some way of identifying Kenobi, right? So they bring out this droid who does just that. He says, look into the droid or whatever, and he starts scanning Kenobi's face. At which point I'm like, you have no choice but to destroy this droid. Like you have zero choice at this point. And frustratingly, he waits until like it's done to destroy it. Like it basically has sent the signal and identified him as Obi-Wan Kenobi. And I'm just like, why did that makes no sense? You would know you have no choice at that point, but
Yeah.
that's fine. Maybe I mean Kenobi, he really is at all costs trying not to fight at this point.
Yeah.
He's
I
he's
mean,
running from every fight he can.
yeah.
So I just thought that was frustrating plot wise. Like, ugh, of course he waits and he destroys it the second it identifies him.
Well, that's the problem is he then does take action. We're 3 episodes in. We expect a little bit more growth out of his character by this point, and it feels like a plot convenience, which it is. So,
Yeah.
because
So
then they can send word and have the real bad guys show up, and I get that, but they could have done that in a way that is more believable. Like I don't know, have a droid that sees him from a distance before he has a chance to destroy it.
right.
It just
But
got
the
in
other
the way of the
thing
ride.
too is like, why do they have to do this? Wouldn't they have the technology? Wouldn't Vader have like wanted tablets everywhere for like all stormtroopers would know what he looks like? And Kenobi has not changed his appearance whatsoever. So like, I don't know.
Yeah, come on.
Yeah. So it's crazy to me that they can't identify him. But he has to fight, and he fights them all with his blaster, still avoiding the Force and his lightsaber pretty much at all costs. Takes them all out with the blaster. It looks like they're then met by another battalion of stormtroopers. But it turns out it's the ally who was supposed to meet him at the coordinates but could not. Her name is Tarla.
I think it's
She
just
takes out the
Tala.
stormtroopers. Tala?
I think it's Tala
Oh,
with
I
no
can't.
R.
I need subtitles next time, man. I can't hear any of these names.
I,
Tala.
I use
I'll
them for
take your
that
word.
reason.
I'll take your word for it.
Yeah, take your
Tala.
Google for
So,
it.
she takes out the stormtroopers. She takes them to her secret bunker. Um, they it's behind like this kind of mechanic shop, hidden door, the whole shebang. They meet Ned B. Is that right? Designation Ned B, the loader droid. I thought he was really cool.
He was cool.
Does that sound right, Ned B? Did I get
I
that one?
think so. I didn't write down a note for
Okay.
Nedby, but I
He
think
was
that
cool.
was
He was
right.
like he might have been my favorite character in this whole episode. um, I thought they had some cool moments with him where it's like everyone treats him like an idiot. He can't talk, and I thought they conveyed just enough emotion somehow through that droid.
Yeah.
So he was cool, which will kind of that's later in the story. But so yeah, it turns out that Tala is essentially running this whole Jedi smuggling operation, really. So friends throughout the galaxy send Jedi or Force sensitive people to these coordinates on this planet, at which point she's able to smuggle them safely, give them new identities, that whole thing. And so this has been going on. Kenobi's just the latest one to show up here. There's carvings of signatures of all the different Jedi that have passed through. So I thought that was a pretty cool story beat. I thought that was really nice world building to just show that like there are people out there trying to save these Jedi and give them new lives.
Yeah, and to help explain like how did some Jedi actually escape? There is some help from some folks. Also, I thought Tala was a cool character in the sense that I always love an Imperial defector or covert operative, and so having seeing her
Yeah.
initially and you thinking, oh, she's part of the the Empire, and then her being like, I'm actually going to help you. Also, kind of she like has realized and become disillusioned with the Empire. It's not what I signed up for. I don't support what's happening, so I'm going to try and help. But she can't really just get out of it, so she's helping in the way she can. So I thought she was a
Yeah.
cool and interesting character.
And she's
Um,
kind of in a position to help more than anybody else. So, yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I thought she was cool. So, that's where they're at. They're in this bunker, and this is when it gets spicy. Vader arrives, and Kenobi senses it. You could tell, and then he leaves the safety of the bunker, goes to the window of the front shop or whatever you want to call it, and here we see all of his troops, and we see Vader marching through the town. And at some point, Vader. So this is. I want to preface this whole scene. I thought this was very interesting because we talked earlier about the Disneyification of things, and I thought this scene was very
yeah,
specifically not Disneyified. I was like, whoa, this is intense. This was an intense scene. So Vader is walking through the town pretty much solo. Everyone else is behind him, and he's just like waiting to sense Kenobi, is what it seems like. And he gets within a couple hundred feet, maybe even closer of Kenobi, and you can tell he senses him at that point. And he literally force grabs a random civilian out of their home and like by the throat, choking them, and holds him up in the air and is just waiting for Kenobi to come out. Little does he know Kenobi's pathetic still at this point. But yeah, so like he's just straight up strangling this person, at which point like his son comes out and he like force pushes him and cracks his neck. And so both of these
yeah.
guys are just dead in the street. And it was just like, holy crap, that was pretty intense. That's it was like, man, okay, that's the Vader we were kind of expecting to see. Like
Yeah,
just no holds barred.
that's what I mean when I liked some of the elements of Vader in this episode because he was intimidating and terrifying. They didn't hold back from him
Yeah.
just being like genocidal, which is not
Yeah, it
good, but
was
it's good for the show, I think. Yeah, they really leaned into. Vader is um, a menace to the galaxy. And I liked the idea that he was trying to get a reaction out of Obi-Wan so that he could sense him and find him. It kind of explained him being a little bit over the top in his violence, because it, as much as Vader is terrifying and willing to kill to further his goals, it feels like he's generally calculated and will use
Yeah,
that
he is calculated.
that violence to as a means to an end, or he does have emotional outbursts of anger at times. But in this case, it wasn't an outburst of anger, so it's like, okay,
It
what's
felt
our
more like a chess
justification?
move.
Yeah, exactly. And I thought that they
It was
conveyed
a
that pretty
chess move.
well, because he's
Yeah.
like looking around and then just
Yeah, he's
indiscriminately
just holding
killing a
and just
couple of
looking
people,
around.
which I thought was good. It's a little frustrating to see Obi-Wan so pathetic, like you said. Like,
I
I'm
know,
fine
yeah.
with him not fully rising up yet, but man, they really went all the way to the end of, man, Obi-Wan
I
just
mean, he didn't
crushed him,
even
man.
Kenobi didn't even really show any sort of like emotional conflict in his face at
Right.
that point. He was just kind
Like,
of watching, you know. He wasn't like, "Oh, I should do something, but I can't," you know. He didn't convey that at least. So yeah,
yeah.
it's the pathetic meter is a little too maxed out right now. But um, yeah, this is interesting because it's the first time, right, that Kenobi sees Darth Vader in person,
Yeah.
let alone knowing it's Anakin now. But so that's a pretty intense moment. We now know the first time that they see each other, or that Kenobi sees him. So Tala, sorry, and Leia escape through the secret tunnels out the back of the bunker that they're in. These secret tunnels apparently run up to some sort of port where there's a ship that these Jedi have been escaping from. Kenobi then attempts to stall Vader, so he doesn't go with Leia and Tala because he's going to stall Vader, which again I don't understand because Vader still didn't know where he was at that point. Like he was still trying to find him. So again, with these people randomly deciding they need to stall people who don't even know where they're at, like it just doesn't make any sense. So
I
just
thought
so
that
that we
too. Is like,
get in
why
it.
wouldn't you just go down the tunnels with them and get on the escape
Yeah, he
ship?
doesn't know where you're at. Why do
And
you need to
you
stall
could
him?
always decide to stall him once you know for sure he's there. Like,
Yeah,
it
yeah.
that felt strange. I don't know
And
if
that's
we're
the
missing
second
anything,
time in
but
3 episodes we've seen someone decide they need to stall someone that doesn't need stalled. Like, so that's frustrating. But so then we cut back to the town. All of Vader's goons are with him. They're sweeping the town, and this was actually the biggest one that I noticed the first time watching through. The biggest, like, why did that happen? They're sweeping the town looking for any evidence of Kenobi, and Riva inexplicably and immediately finds the secret room, like without any sort of like indication that she saw something suspicious. Nothing. She just like walks into the room, the correct room, and then like finds the secret back room and everything. And I was just like, man, there's like nothing. There's no reason that she found that. That was my thought, at least.
yeah, I noted the same thing, which is, how did she find that so quickly and so easily?
Yeah,
I don't know if
I
there was
mean,
a reason that we both missed, but it felt like she
the
just
only
happened
the
upon it.
only thing the only thing that happens is what's his name, Ned B, the loader droid, just kind of casually walks out of there and shuts the door. But he's just like a loader droid, just walking. There was really nothing suspicious about it. But that's the only thing she saw, and I think they kind of tried to make it seem like that's what gave her a hunch. I don't know. It was not believable. I wish they could have given some sort of shown us something that she saw, or something
Yeah.
that kind of she saw no one else did, that tipped her off to this was the secret location. So it was
Yeah,
pretty hard to believe that she just walked in and immediately found it in like 30 seconds.
yeah, I wish there was some more interesting clue that she noticed that make they can also make
Yeah,
you think, wow, she's a really good inquisitor. Like, she's sharp. She notices these little
she's
things.
inquisiting so hard right
She's
now.
inquisiting the crap out of this. Um, yeah, that's kind of back to the writing, is it just feels like there's a
It
lot
is.
of
It all is. Yeah.
convenience and contrivances, and I'm okay to for with a little bit of that in a show like Star Wars,
You have to be. There's a
but it
suspension of disbelief, but it's been notably too much suspension in these 3 episodes. It's 3 to 5 times an episode where you can point to something and be like, man, that is a hardcore plot convenience that makes no
right.
sense. You know, and
And it's
that's too
frustrating
much.
because a lot of these things, I don't know that they need to fundamentally rewrite it, just to spend a little more time
Just add in
thinking through.
like we just talked about. All
Yeah,
you have to do is add something she saw, show the audience why she new to go in that room. Give us
Right.
something, anything, you know? So, anyways, those are my thoughts there. We then cut to Vader versus Kenobi, which initially amounts to Kenobi running, which was
Another running
both
sequence. We've gotten like
another
one per
pathetic
episode.
another pathetic move by Kenobi, but kind of funny because Vader's just standing there with his red lightsaber, and you're like, oh, Kenobi's gonna bust out his lightsaber, and then he just like takes off. So I was like, okay, that's kind of funny, I guess. Eventually, they are forced to fight. Vader's pretty much messing up Kenobi because, I mean, he hasn't practiced Jediism in 11 years at this point, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Um, let's see here. We cut back to Tala and Leia. They're running through the tunnels, and Leia keeps saying that Tala needs to go back and help Kenobi. And so Tala leaves. Finally, she's like, okay, and she leaves Leia alone, this child,
This is
to go
another.
save Kenobi, a Jedi.
Oh, this is something I was going to bring up. Like, why would you leave the Princess of Alderaan, who's like, "Hey, go help Kenobi"? She's like, "All right, you hang
It's
out here
because she
by
knows how
yourself."
pathetic Kenobi is. He's more pathetic than Leia at this moment in time.
Even if that's true, you don't leave the child. You let the pathetic man die. I
With the
don't know.
light, the man with a blaster, the Force, and a lightsaber. Go
Yeah,
save him and leave Leia alone. Anyway,
that
so
felt
then there's
ridiculous.
another thing. There's another thing I thought, which this could be explained. You could say whatever. This is nitpicking, but like to me, it seemed like this was a tunnel to the port, a tunnel from the bunker to the port. I didn't imagine this to be a labyrinth of tunnels, right? So Tala leaves Leia to head back. And at this point, Riva has found the secret bunker. So my thought is, oh crap, Tala is literally about to get killed by Riva. Like that's what's going to happen. And I mean, we'll get to there. This is kind of out of order, but Tala ends up later helping Kenobi, and you're like, how did she get past Riva? Because Riva found the tunnel. Anyways, that was another thing. I was just like, I don't understand
It's hard to
what happened
visualize
there.
how that all came together. Like, if this is
I
a
was super confused later when she showed up and she helped Kenobi. I'm like, what? How did you sneak past Riva?
all the and they
Anyways,
could have addressed that by saying at one point saying this is an elaborate network of tunnels. It will lead us to the ship, but we have to follow the right path. Follow these markings.
yeah,
I'm going
one
to leave
line,
you
right?
now. Stay the course. And then you're like, okay, she took a different tunnel, but it doesn't give you any of that.
And for that one, I'm willing to suspend disbelief. Okay, maybe there is a labyrinth and we don't know. Fine, whatever. But it was notable because I was like, oh, she's gonna run right into Riva, and she
Mm-hmm.
didn't. So let's see. Now we're cutting back to Vader. He's still messing up Kenobi, and this is another pretty intense moment. He starts force grabbing Kenobi. He lights the ground on fire, and he's dragging Kenobi through the fire like very slowly.
Yeah.
Um, Very
Let's
intense. Yeah, it was just
let's
like,
talk
holy
about the
crap, this
let,
is.
let's talk about the Vader Kenobi fight in general, because there's kind of the sort of chase scene, and then they actually kind of have a confrontation. And on the chase scene itself, like it felt it felt kind of weird watching them just kind of like meander through a construction site, Vader after Obi-Wan. I didn't love that. And then the fight sequence itself, I'm interested to hear your thoughts about the fire, because on the one hand, I thought that was really an interesting decision, to have him like try and burn Obi-Wan literally. I thought that was kind of neat, but there are also some plot issues with that happen at one point. So, um, yeah, what are your thoughts on that whole
So yeah,
sequence?
I was curious. Well, first of all, the whole kind of fight slash running through the junkyard or whatever it was. Um, Other than it being slightly pathetic and him running around, I thought it was kind of cool because Vader is chase. He doesn't chase. He's just like
Just walk
slowly
slowly.
walking
Yeah.
towards him continually, and it's just very terrifying. Um, their fight was interesting. I kind of took it that, well, and he kind of says it later on. He's not trying to just kill Kenobi. He has more in mind for him. He wants to make him suffer. And so that kind of explains, like, Kenobi's clearly not very good at fighting with his lightsaber right now. And you're like, why hasn't Vader just killed him? I think he's just kind of messing with Kenobi during that fight. And as far as the fire scene, I thought it was intense. I thought it was very cool to see that anger that Anakin has for what happened to him, in episode 3, the movie. and to kind of want to carry out what happened to him on Kenobi, which is super messed up and not a healthy individual. But we know that about Vader, and so I thought that was cool. But I do remember thinking like, he's been in the fire. Like I thought something would happen quicker. He was in the fire for a long time. I'm like, how is this going to work? Because we've seen Kenobi later on in life, and he doesn't have any notable burn marks. So apparently he wasn't, no third degree burns on Kenobi from what happened here tonight.
Or they're on
I
his
guess
shoulder, and we never saw his
that's
bare
what I thought. I'm like,
exposed
okay, maybe
shoulder.
it's, yeah, maybe they went through all the footage of episodes 4, 5, and 6, and they're like, we never see his shoulder, so we can say he got really burned. But like his face is on the ground, part of his
Yeah,
face.
his face is
Yeah,
like
I
in the
was like, I
flames.
don't.
When if you think about Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith, when Anakin is when they're on Mustafar and Anakin falls to the ground without legs, he lights on fire pretty quick. Granted, it's an entire lava planet, but Obi-Wan's literally in a flaming bed of coals. It just felt a little convenient that he didn't. You'd think he'd light on
Oh
fire
yeah,
or
he didn't
something.
catch on fire. I didn't even think about that.
And
Yeah,
I don't
that's
know. I feel
weird.
like
I mean, he
maybe
was in there for a minute. He was in there for a minute
this
too.
is something where I'm willing to suspend my disbelief here. I liked the moment as well. Like I didn't expect that to happen, but it was a really powerful way to show that Vader, like he has a grudge against Obi-Wan, and he wants him to hurt in the ways he's hurt, and Obi-Wan like actually feeling the physical sensation of burning. I thought that was pretty
Yeah.
evocative and
I'd
powerful.
rather them leave this scene in rather than take it out because they're like, oh, this is hard to explain later on. I think it was on the line. I mean, logistically, yeah, that doesn't make a ton of sense, but I think it was worth it to have the scene. I think it was powerful.
I think so too. I think my big
So
issue
yeah.
comes with. So I guess we have to go on how Obi-Wan kind of gets out of this pickle, and so then I'll save
Oh
my
yeah.
gripe for that.
So okay. Yeah. I mean, there's more. There's more coming. So Tala saves him at this point. She's sniping from a distance, and this is the point at which I'm like, holy crap! How did they not run into each other?
Mm-hmm.
Don't know. But she's there. She shoots something that explodes and creates more fire. But this was actually, as I was watching this the first time, this was probably the second biggest, like, what the heck? This makes no sense. Um, she creates slightly more fire with this explosion, at which point Kenobi's on the other side, and the loader droid shows up and very slowly picks him up and walks away. And they lost Kenobi. I was like, what? He has an entire army with him. He's Darth freaking Vader. Like, he
I'm
could
sorry.
walk through that fire probably if he wants to. Like,
So here's I thought about this too because I was like, one, I would guess that his suit is like fire, like flame retardant.
right. If he had one stipulation for his costume,
I
it
think
had to
it
be
would be
fire retardant.
I can
Oh,
resist fire more. And I can even go so far. Like I saw someone talking about it who said that there's this theory that like Vader is afraid of fire, which makes total sense. So the idea
that
that
could
he
make
still
sense.
won't
Sure.
walk through fire, I'm totally fine with that. I'm willing to buy that. He's the strongest force user that we know about. Why didn't he
Yeah.
just pick Obi-Wan up, pull him through the
Force pull both
flames,
of them over. Like,
or
I don't,
hold him in place while
and
you're
even
people
that,
around?
even
Like
that, I have to rewatch this, but like, I think they literally could have walked around the fire.
I
It
think they
wasn't
could have
that
too.
much fire. It
It
wasn't
didn't.
like a great Grand Canyon of fire.
It wasn't
And so
like
the
some
fact that Darth Vader and
conflagration.
his
Yeah,
battalion were separated from Kenobi, I was just like,
yeah.
man, that is the weakest escape I've ever seen
It was
in
like 4 or 5
anything
feet
ever.
of flames. Like, if you're gonna do that, make it
Yeah.
an explosion that knocks everybody to their
Like,
feet.
just
Smoke is everywhere. You can't see. Even Vader's on the
smoke you
ground.
can't see. Yeah, totally.
Vader gets knocked down. His cape's on fire, and it triggers an emotional traumatic response. Do something like that, and then it's like,
Yeah.
okay, I can see how they got away. But Vader's just standing them watch as they like the droid takes him
Watching,
away.
watching him. Vader can see the droid picking him up and walking away, and you're
So
like,
Vader,
what?
he pulled a guy through a window a few
What?
minutes ago. Why can't he just pull Obi-Wan through the fire? That's his whole goal anyway. Just pull him to
I
you
know,
and
yeah.
walk away.
That was rough. I didn't buy that, and I was
That
like, oh
kind of
my
broke
goodness,
the episode for me. And
that was weak. And then it cuts to the next scene. It cuts to the town, Samurai Inquisitor, and someone walks up to him and says, "We lost him. He had help." And Samurai Inquisitor goes, "Now we'll never find him." I was just like, oh my god. Oh,
oh,
there. He listed lazily to the left. It reminded me of that Family Guy Star Wars where
yeah,
he's like a professional pilot, and he's like, this guy's good. He just like slightly veers to the left. Anyways, that's what happened here. So, rounding out the episode, Leia, all by her lonesome, continues running down the tunnel, and she finally gets to the exit, assumedly the port where she would escape the planet. And who does she find there but Reva, who has killed the helper, the pilot, or whoever it was there. And she has Leia now at this point, right? She's got Leia. My next question, once again, because they never end, is how did Reva get to the port before Leia without crossing paths with Leia? Because last we saw Reva, she was in the tunnels.
I think she
So
can
so
teleport.
she navigated the labyrinth somehow better. Like Leia took the long route, and Reva took the shortcut. Like I don't.
Right, because even
That
if
was the
Reva's
other thing.
faster,
After
Reva would
watching
have
it,
come upon her, I would think, and then just
she would have
captured her
crossed
there.
her.
Yeah, that didn't make
So
any sense to
that
me.
was one. The second time I watched it, I was like, wait a second. The only way
How are
she would
you
have
here?
gotten to the port is through the tunnel, and the only way she would have done that, she would have had to pass Leia on her way. So she just like is walking really fast past Leia and doesn't acknowledge her until she gets to the port, apparently. So just it's just too much. It's just never ending. All of these kind of feel like little nitpicky gripes, but when you add them all up through the course of an episode, it's the weight is felt. The weight of the
Hmm.
suspension of disbelief is, and not even suspension of disbelief, but just like things that are not thought out.
Yeah,
Like if you're just watching it and you think about things in sequential order, you go, oh, that doesn't make sense. We need to explain that, or oh, we need to
right.
adjust that. And that's just not happening in this series right now.
The
And
sequence of events feels like something out of a more amateur, like an amateur film, where it's like, you know, yeah, you clearly haven't thought all these things through, and it it adds up, and it makes it like we're already being asked to believe this fantastical world with space wizards. You got to put a little bit of thought into the sequence of events so that we can be like, okay, yeah, I can see how that all happened. And it feels like they really didn't do that at all.
yeah, so that ends episode 3.
Also, Leia's
I
kidnapped again. Like,
yeah,
she's
I know,
kidnapped
right?
twice within this show. She's kidnapped at the beginning of
I really thought we
A
were
New
gonna
Hope.
get. I thought we were gonna get her back to her parents and move on with the story, but apparently Leia's gonna be the central kidnappee through the entire 6 episodes. So,
Yeah, and it's just again with
um,
like Leia being kidnapped again, it just feels like we're kind of repeating ground. And as I think about what the remaining 3 episodes are going to be, it it's hard not to think it's just going to be a lot more of the same. One other thing I want to say is I feel like the confrontation between Obi-Wan and Vader felt like it happened at a weird point within the show. Um, this is supposed to be an incredibly powerful emotional moment, and there was some of that, but it just, I don't know, it feels like they had a fight, but it happened in the 3rd episode. I imagine they'll fight again at some point. um, it just felt like a
yeah,
weird
this
time
is
for it
the
to happen.
foreshadowing fight or something. Yeah,
Right, and it's just, if you think about like the original Star Wars movies, when Vader and Obi-Wan see each other, like Obi-Wan says, I haven't, that's a when Obi-Wan says that's a name I haven't heard in a long time. Like, it feels like him and Vader hadn't seen each other in a long time as of episode 4, which is 10 years from now. The more Vader and Obi-Wan meet each other throughout this miniseries, the more it starts to feel a little bit off. Like, I kind of feel like, I don't
I
know.
mean, 10 years is a long time.
It is. It's just
I thought
there's
I thought their confrontation in episode 3 was needed. Like, good grief, it makes sense if we're gonna have 2 confrontations between them. You got to have one by episode 3.
yeah, I
You
just
can't jam them all into the final 3. So my bigger problem is with pacing in general. If you told me, hey, our first Kenobi Vader confrontation in person is going to be episode 3 out of 6, I'd be like, yeah, that sounds right. But when you watch these 3 episodes, the pacing is just so all over the place and disjointed that nothing nothing feels quite right. The story doesn't feel like it's flowing very well, I think is the main problem.
well, I also feel like the
Um,
buildup didn't quite work. Like I'm in theory okay with they meet up in episode 3 and in episode 6, but the buildup felt off, and I really liked some of the moments in their fight, like Vader dragging Obi-Wan through the fire. Aside from the whole escaping being messed up, that part was really interesting. Him stalking Obi-Wan through the scrapyard was very sinister and was kind of cool. I wish the buildup in the emotions hit better. Of like, these people were best friends. They were kind of older brother, younger brother, almost even not quite paternal. There was a really interesting dynamic between them. And I feel like a lot of the depth of that I didn't feel. I felt some of Vader's anger when he dragged him through the fire, and you're like, okay, he's pretty mad. And it makes sense. But I wish we had felt a little bit more nuance of each of their emotions throughout this episode or even leading up to this episode. Um, and I don't know exactly what fixes that. I think pacing must be part of it because it just
Well, I
it
think what fixes it is my critique of the first two episodes. I think we should have seen more of Vader
yeah.
in conjunction with Kenobi and less of Riva. I go back
Yeah.
to, I don't want Riva. I don't need Riva in this at all. You know, we have 6 episodes. We need to get as much Kenobi and Vader as we can. I
Right.
think if we were kind of getting a Kenobi's story cutting over to Darth Vader's story through the
Mm-hmm.
first 2 episodes, this would have felt a lot better. But this is like just the first time we get to see Vader is in episode 3, really. So
Yeah.
um,
Yeah, and I feel like
I
I'm so
think that's a
detached
lot of
from
it for
Vader's
me.
emotional state until he drags Obi-Wan through the coals, but it'd be really interesting to get a little bit of Vader's perspective about where is he at
Yeah,
now that
I want
he's
to hear
Vader?
from him.
Like,
I want to see the human side of him still. I want to see him maybe interact with someone out of his suit, or his daily goings on, or like what he's I want to hear from him and see what he's doing. And we didn't really get that. We just got him showing up because he's angry at Kenobi. And it's like, yeah, that's fine. I get that's the whole crux of this show.
mhm.
But it would have been really nice, just like we spent a lot of time watching Kenobi whine and be pathetic. I would have liked to see Vader be incredibly angry and haunted by Kenobi just as much, and like see
Yeah.
that
And
from
maybe in
him.
denial, like, I don't care about Obi-Wan. He's dead to me. I'm just going to find him and kill him. And then someone,
Yeah.
maybe Riva calls him Anakin because she knows for some reason. And he force chokes her for a minute and says, don't call me that ever again. And you can see that this guy is haunted by his past with Obi-Wan, even though he's acting like it's just another problem he needs to take care of as vice president of the galaxy. Um, they could have shown more
Yep.
elements like that where you get a sense of his emotional state, but instead you don't get it right up until he's forced choking him through fire, which was cool, but like it's missing all of that buildup. I think you're right.
Well, and Darth Vader still is this very distant character right now, even through these episodes. And I get the show is called Obi-Wan Kenobi, so you can't complain about how much Obi-Wan Kenobi there's been in the show, but I think it was kind of sold, and a lot of people felt like we're going to get a lot of Darth Vader as well, and we have. But yeah, I want to see some of that emotional complexity and depth from Anakin
Right.
underneath Darth Vader, because the 4, 5, and 6, the original trilogy, we don't really get that from Vader either. Vader's very much just a villain. He's just a
Mm-hmm.
caricature of a villain at that point.
Yeah.
And so I think we all just wanted to really see the person Anakin in conflict, maybe with Darth Vader, in conflict with his feelings about Kenobi, the
Right.
emotional human side of what he's dealing with. And we just haven't gotten any of that yet. And honestly, um, kind of to wrap it up here, after episode 3, like I mentioned at the outset, it's time to adjust expectations. Um, for me, I've adjusted expectations. I don't imagine we will get that from Vader. I'm not expecting it because we haven't seen it to this point. The writing and the way the show's been done, I just at this point don't expect to get any of that depth from Darth Vader. I don't expect the writing to get better. I don't expect the plot conveniences to get better. This is what it is. And not that we won't continue to talk about it and probably complain, but at this point, my expectations are definitely adjusted. I will go into each episode kind of knowing what this is, trying to enjoy it for what it is, and then we'll come on here and nitpick it to death. So that's kind of where I'm at.
I'm trying to moderate my expectations. I want to keep thinking this is going to turn into something uh, greater, but I think it is what it is. It's another Disney Star Wars show for good and for bad. There are some good parts to it. I don't think it's a complete train wreck. Seeing Vader was cool. Um, all of that stuff is fine, but it's not great, and there are some actively bad parts of it. So we'll see how the
What
last 3
hurts
episodes go.
what hurts is you said it's another Disney Star Wars show, but I would certainly argue this is the worst of the 3 that they've done, when it comes to writing and just all that. I think Mandalorian, as well as what was it, Boba Fett, Boba.
Yeah.
I think they were both better done, and it just hurts. It just hurts, and you don't want to accept it, but at some point you have to. It just seems like naturally this would get the most attention and the most quality, and just make sure it's right. And there's nothing weird about the writing, and have the best people on it. You would think this would be it, and unfortunately, for some reason, it seems a step below even the other two Star Wars shows. So that's why it's hard to come to grips with, at least for me personally. But
yeah, we'll get an episode out here for the fourth part of Obi-Wan pretty soon. Hopefully it takes a turn for the better, but I mean, you'll find out. Come back here in a couple of days.
Stick around. Yeah. So if you enjoy watching us kind of enjoy Star Wars, but also nitpicking it to death, then you'll probably enjoy the next episode or the one before this. And remember, you can find us over on Patreon at patreon.com/neverlag. And hopefully we'll see you around for our next Scene It with Kenobi episode 4.